What's up, everybody? Brian Elwood here. Welcome back to the Virtual Real Estate Investing Podcast. So on today's episode, I've actually got a special guest with me, a guy that I have worked with for 3, 4, 5 years. I don't even know how long it's been now. We've done a lot of amazing stuff together, been through a lot of business challenges, and we still work together in the education business, a little bit in my investing business. And this is Mr. Danny Coleman. How's it going, Danny?
Hey, what's going on, Brian? Awesome to be on the show.
Yeah, excited to have you, man. So, why don't I let you tell a little bit of your backstory from your perspective, kind of before we dive in. How did we meet? A little bit about your business experience and kind of what you're up to now.
Sure. So I've worked for small business my whole life. I was homeschooled when I was younger. And so I've been working for small business literally since I was like 12 or 13. I had a few corporate stints and realized that it just was not for me. I found it to be kind of exhausting and draining, even when I was overpaid for what I was doing. And so I came back to small business and without kind of covering everything, I've basically been in operations, process, systems, management. Basically, I always tell people I'm the ghost in the machine. That's where I've spent most of my time, my career, if you will. And then in 2014 is when I met you and your business partner, Frank, at the time for the real estate development company that we were in together. So for obviously, you know this, but for the listeners, you were my boss for about 3.5 years, and just learned a lot working with you and with Frank, a lot about culture and whatnot. And you guys allowed me the opportunity to be your business development manager, where I got to work on the business a whole lot, creating systems, processes, and things like that. And so what I learned, a lot of it from you guys, but as well as from my previous experience. When you and Frank decided to go your separate ways, it was also what I saw as an opportunity for me to kind of do what I've been wanting to do, which is consult with multiple small businesses. So my goal is really to kind of help small business owners have the same kind of clarity that you and Frank got on what you wanted the business to do for you, and then allowing people in the business to really kind of take initiative for themselves and to really kind of own their roles and responsibilities, which of course then takes pressure for doing everything off of the owners. And then in addition to that, it really just kind of makes for happy and fulfilled people. So I want to basically take what I've learned over the past 10 years with small businesses, including what I learned with you, and try to bring that into as many other small businesses as I can. So that's what I'm doing now. And then along with obviously working with you.
Awesome. Yeah. And so for all the listeners out there, Danny and I work together now in the virtual real estate investing business. He's the COO and was also, like he said, the COO of our former business. However, I didn't really let you, embody that role fully back in the original business, right? Because I didn't really know exactly how to be a visionary and let you do your thing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was hard, I think, because, you and Frank both kind of tried to embody, I think, the visionary integrator relationship. And then I think what we found out over time is that Frank was also really at heart a visionary as well, just with more integrator tendencies. And so I was kind of like the I don't know, backup integrator, if you will, maybe the second string. And so that kind of just created, I never really got to fully own it because, Frank was kind of residing in that role as well. So when you and Frank kind of went your separate ways, it kind of gave me an opportunity to fully serve as your integrator. And I think that's kind of what we're doing pretty well right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually I'm going to be on your podcast soon, and we're going to cover this whole story in detail of how I learned how to be a visionary and allow an integrator into the business and the transformation that that causes in business. And you guys can check that out on Danny's podcast. It's called Organizing Chaos. Just search for Danny Coleman or Organizing Chaos in iTunes. It's a great podcast, so check that out. But today, Danny, I want to talk to you about your perspective on business because like we've already kind of foreshadowed, you and I we look at business through a different lens. We both want the same outcome, but we both add different types of value to any business we work on. And I've always seen you as like kind of a business genius. I was like, there's something Danny knows that I can't really see or figure out. And I've always kind of been curious. And I'm really glad you started publishing, because I'm getting to, see what's in your brain and see how you view business. So the main question I want to ask you today is, as a small business consultant working with small businesses, primarily you're in Columbia, Tennessee. What is the biggest challenge that you see most small businesses have?
Sure. So I think I kind of see it as twofold. And it's hard to say which one is the worst problem to have. But the first issue that I see is that most small business owners, they never find and truly empower a number two, which is an integrator. So visionaries are 99% of the time the people who are going to start the business, because what they're doing is they're creating something that doesn't exist yet. And so they have in their heads what this business needs to look like. And so oftentimes what happens, what I liken it to rather, is that a visionary is like the choke on an engine. At the beginning, when it's a cold start, it's 100% necessary. You need that choke on. But if you try to really go, take off down the highway or whatever with that choke still on, you're going to destroy your engine. And you're also not going to be able to go as fast. So what needs to happen is, once a visionary gets a business up off the ground, because they have that energy, that sheer force of will to get something that does not exist and make it materialize and make it exist. Once they get that up off the ground, it's important that they, as quickly as possible, start looking for a good number two. And that number two is going to be an integrator. And the integrator is someone who is more interested in running the day-to-day operations of the business. And what they do is integrate. A good integrator will get, they'll understand and resonate with the idea or the vision that the visionary has for the business. And then they're able to kind of take that and manage the people, like I said, manage the day-to-day, implement projects and things like that, so that the visionary can continue to lead specifically in areas of culture, as well as kind of where the business needs to go next, where it needs to pivot, or a new problem that the business is suited to solve that exists in the world. That's where visionary lives. And the integrator sees those ideas and brings them into reality, and marries them up with what the actual capacity of the business is. So how many people are on the team? Can they handle, implementing this new thing or doing this new thing? And integrator has their fingers on the pulse of that. And of course, also too, and I know you've given credit to it before, and I want to make sure I give credit to it as well. A lot of this comes from Rocket Fuel, which is a fantastic book by Gino Wickman and Mark Winters. So that's kind of what I see as the first big problem, is that a visionary never really hires an integrator, or if they do, they never truly empower them to run the business. And so the second thing then is hiring with intention. Most small businesses do not hire with any intention. What happens is things get so busy, or things are so crazy, that they just start inviting people into the business without really vetting them, without getting to understand what their skills are. Like, are they more of a manager? Are they more of a technician? These are terms that I bring from the E-Myth Revisited, the other great book that I found my business philosophy on. And so without that intention, what always happens is just like, Jane's already working for you. And so, you're like, oh man, we're so busy. We need somebody else to do X, Y, Z. And Jane's like, oh, well, my sister needs a job, or my brother needs a job, or I have a friend who needs to work. And you're just like, okay, yeah, sure. Tell them to show up. And they show up. And basically all you're doing is you're putting a warm body in this role. And then you wonder, what business owners will wonder, why they can't trust their team to get things, to take care of business, basically. And so bringing intention to the hiring process is the other big thing that small businesses are missing. So to recap, that's hiring a number two and empowering them to run your business. And then secondly, focusing on hiring with intention. So those are definitely the two biggest common denominator issues that I see in small business.
That's awesome, man. So I have a question that I'm sure some of the listeners are wondering as well, because you taught me this concept largely, and so I turn around and teach it to, our students in VREI and whatnot now. And a lot of them ask me about hiring an integrator, but they're still a one-man show, right? And they also need like an office manager to do the $10 an hour, like paying bills type tasks. And they might need someone to, you know, be over sales, which is also obviously a really important part of growing a business. Getting it off the ground is bringing in revenue.
Right.
So that's a question I've also always wondered is do you hire the integrator first, or do you hire a few people and kind of manage them as a visionary, as best as a visionary can, and then bring in the integrator later? Like, what's your advice on that?
Sure. So I don't think that there's a right or wrong if you're going to at least go with one of those two options. If you're going to hire an integrator first, you're going to have to hire an integrator who's prepared and ready to do technical work. Because when you're, so let me back up a little bit. Managers are typically what integrators are. Integrators are managers. They don't like to do technician work for a long time. And it wears on them. Repetitive tasks are not their strong suit. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be, because that's what technicians will come in and do very faithfully. Again, this all borrows from terminology that comes from the E-Myth. There's entrepreneurs, visionaries, managers, who one of those managers, however many managers you have in your business, one of them is going to be your integrator.
Okay.
And if you only got one manager, then that's your integrator. And then the rest are technicians. So these are like your sales associates, your baristas, you know, your guys on the floor, salesmen, things like that. So sorry, coming back to your original question, as far as what you should do first, like I said, there's not a right or wrong answer, but if you do hire an integrator first, they need to be ready to do technician work until the business scales. So I kind of consider myself that type. I'm okay with doing technician work at the beginning of a business because I'm on board with the visionaries' vision as far as where they want to take the business. And that's where you and I are doing a lot of that right now. I'm doing a lot of technician work that I might not normally do in a business. So for instance, I didn't do a lot of this technician work in our later years at the last company that we worked together for, but I did do it when I first started out with you guys. But you all quickly saw that my talent or my skills were better suited for management type stuff. And so we kind of, as the business scaled, I outsourced my technician work to someone else. And that way I kind of stayed in the management world. So that's option one. If you find if you want to have an integrator as your first hire, it's a great idea, but you need to make sure that they're comfortable with doing technician work for, I would say, at least 6 to 12 months if you're at the beginning of your business. On the other side, I think that it's also okay for you to hire a few technicians and you just do your best to manage them as a visionary. Things that you're going to have to watch out for, though, is if you have good talent that shows up, you got to make sure that you don't burn them out. Because a visionary can, have a tendency to be micromanaging, made to be a little bit overbearing. And a lot of visionaries simply don't like to manage people. And so what they're doing is they're forcing themselves to do something they don't really want to do. But again, you don't want to do that long term. So as soon as you're able to, you want to be able to hire an integrator. But I do think that it's okay to hire some technicians first and just do your best with what you can at the beginning. And then just always have in your mind, I need to do whatever I can. How do I hire a visionary? How do I justify the expenses to hire, an integrator? How do I justify the expenses to be able to hire an integrator as soon as possible? And just don't linger in that area too long where you're managing those technicians. Because like I said, there is a tendency for them to get burnout.
Got it. Yeah, I like that idea. It's like you could hire an integrator. It's like you could create a hybrid position. Basically, it says, I'd like you to run this company for me and manage everyone. However, for the first 6 to 12 months, I'm going to be asking you to do some technician type work mixed in with, integrator type work. I guess if you set the expectation up front and you communicated it clearly, then you could create that kind of role. That's my favorite option of the two, being the visionary who wants to stay out of the weeds as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I want to ask you about your second piece of advice, hiring with intention, because I love that. And just over the course of being an entrepreneur, I've really come to appreciate the importance of having a great process for hiring. And it's pretty thorough, honestly. I mean, you and I just hired a Facebook ads manager for the education business. And not only did we vet them, do a bunch of interviews, we made them do a 6-week competition. We figured out what their values are as people and stuff. I mean, this is just there's a contracted position to run Facebook ads for. So it's serious. So talk a little bit more about that. What are the most important one or two things to get right when you go to hire a new person for your company?
Sure. So one thing that, it kind of goes to this question, but also pertains to the last thing we were talking about, is I don't see a lot of technicians also wanting to serve in the role as manager, but I do think that there's a lot of manager types that can serve in the role of that can do the hybrid thing, like how you mentioned, serve in the technician role. So when you're hiring, I do think that the first thing that the most important thing, I'm going to come back to that. The most important thing is to hire based on culture. There's two things that you're going to evaluate whenever you're hiring someone. There's culture and there's skill set. So culture is, do their values align with yours? Do they understand what you're trying to do? And do they get excited about that? And then that's culture. And I think that's the most important thing, because you can always teach skill sets later. Obviously people have different, natural predispositions to be good at one thing or the other. But for instance, like website building, right? It's not necessarily, it's not very hard, but it's harder for some people, easier for other people. If you hire someone based on culture first and you ask them, let's say they check the box 100% on the culture side. And then you're like, hey, so do you also know how to build websites? Because that's what I really need for this role. They can tell you like, you know what, I've done some, but I don't really have a lot of experience with it. If they totally check the box on culture, I think it's always a judgment call, but I really do think my recommendation is that you go ahead and bring them on. If they have the right kind of attitude to want to learn things, then they can learn those technical skill sets later. So whenever I'm hiring, the most important thing I look for is culture fit first. Who is this person? What's important to them? What frustrates them? What motivates them? And are they excited to be a part of this team? And if they are, why? And those are all the things that matter the most. So when I have an interview with someone, 75% of my questions are going to be about the type of person that they are, and 25% or less is going to be about the skill set and technical part. And again, that's just something that I feel works in small business. I don't know how to test that on the corporate scale. I don't think that the corporate scale works for that really. But anyways, I digress. That's not my area.
Right.
So that's the most important thing. The second most important thing is what you said earlier, is expectations. So managing expectations. So letting them know ahead of time what to expect working in your business. So many times I was hired with that was not done. Like the expectations were not set. They built their business up to be something greater than it was. They kind of made me think that I was going to excel faster than I really could possibly have excelled. And those are the things that are going to get good talent to just kick, just dust the whatever. They're going to get out of there. They're not going to stick with you when you kind of aren't fully honest with them. The best thing you can ever do, and this is something for all business relationships, the best thing you can ever do is be transparent. And you and I have had a lot of conversations about that. And in fact, we've had a lot of difficult conversations over the years, because we taking the effort to really be transparent with each other. And so when you're hiring somebody, set those expectations clearly, be completely transparent with them about where the business is. If you're just starting out, let them know that hey, there's going to be a lot of scrapping here in the beginning. You're going to have to wear multiple hats, yada, yada, whatever it is, just be clear with them, set that expectation. And you can really do that very well by using position agreements, which is something that we do teach in the virtual real estate investing masterclass that you and I created. We teach using position agreements for your hiring. And that is a great tool to get people to understand what the expectations are for that role, and then what you expect them to do when they're part of your business. So those are the two things to recap: is when you're hiring, look at culture and skill set and always lean towards culture. And then the second thing being position agreements. Having those created for the position that you're hiring for allows you to really clearly set expectations with whoever it is that's about to come on board.
Man, that's great. I really love that. I have a question that I've struggled with a little bit. I think I'm starting to figure it out. I'm sure there's some listeners out there that are wondering about this, but just how do you know if somebody shares the same values that you do?
Yeah, I mean, that is hard. And that's why I have so many different questions in the interview template that I use to do that. So I start off, a lot of it has to do with the hiring process, which you alluded to earlier, which we did. We do for all of our hires now. And I think it's been to great success. We've had a lot of success, I think, with these hires that we've used the process for. And a lot of that has to do with the way that the process is set up. I won't go into all detail on it right now, but the way the process is set up It helps kind of show who has initiative, who is excited about your business and the position that you're offering. And those things help pre-screen a lot of people so that the people you end up actually interviewing, you're actually interviewing, are highly likely to be a good fit, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not 100%, which actually that's never going to happen. You're never going to have someone who's 100% for sure hire. I mean, in my opinion. But anyways, so yeah, so I would say that really just spending more time on the questions that dig into the person's who they are, and really kind of spending time listening. When you're in an interview, lots of times what will happen is you're just kind of waiting for the next question, or you're just apprehensive. Maybe you're nervous in general.
Yeah.
So something that I do for all of my interviews is I actually try to lower that stress so that everyone's really listening to each other. Specifically myself, I'm listening to their answers. And by doing that, I create an environment where they feel like they can be a little bit more vulnerable or a little bit more themselves. And so what I do is I just lead off with some about me. I talk about myself a little bit, and who I am and what I like to do and what gets me excited and stuff like that. And that helps it seem more like a conversation, like over a drink or something like that. And when you're having a conversation, if you think about like, well, how does the guy at the bar or the coffee shop or whatever, how do I have good conversations like that? And it's because there's no expectation there. There's no stress. You're just being yourselves. You're being two people when you're talking. And if you can try to create that environment in your interview, then you can get a better idea of the real version of this person rather than the plastic face that kind of gets put on in a lot of interviews. And then I'd say ultimately you got to go with your gut to some degree. But process obviously helps. So it's kind of that balance between process and then intuition.
Yeah, that's great. It would be awesome to get to a place of comfort during an interview where you just felt like you were striking up a conversation with a stranger at the bar. Maybe I should start drinking a little whiskey before my job interviews.
Yeah, and there are even people who actually implement that. There's certain businesses I've heard that they implement like a phase of the interview where they'll take them out for drinks, and they don't get crashed or anything like that, but they'll have a few drinks to see how this person handles alcohol, because that's oftentimes a telltale sign of whether or not someone's someone you want to work with long term. But it also kind of lowers inhibitions a little bit, and people are a little bit more genuine and more themselves, and that's just the world we live in. So
yeah. One way it's helped me, one way of thinking about it that's helped me understand how to know someone's a value fit or not is this a type of person you'd want to go have a beer with? We keep bringing up alcohol. I promise we're not we're not full blown alcoholics yet, but we did that actually at our old company a couple times, where we were on the brink of hiring somebody and we had the team go meet them for a beer. And if they didn't click with the team, they didn't get hired. Yeah. Even if we really wanted to hire them, it was like a yes or a no.
Yeah.
Did they click? Did you like them or not? Basically. Yeah.
And I would say too, it's not, that doesn't say anything to a person if they don't click. It just means they don't click with your team. So it doesn't mean they're a bad person or even if there's someone who doesn't drink, they have an anti-alcohol stance, for instance, or they've struggled with it in the past or staying away from it. All you really need to do is get this person to be themselves around you. And if you feel like this person's being genuine, that's literally as best you can do. So hopefully you are seeing the genuine person and you can move forward with that. But even if you have a little bit of doubt, like, I don't know, maybe they seem like maybe they were a little bit fake. Like, the best thing you can do is just create that environment and go with it. So like I said, there is a certain amount of time where you just gotta have a deadline for your hires too. That's probably a third thing that's important. Have a deadline so that you don't spend forever wondering whether or not you found the perfect or just the right person or whatever. Often, it's better to be perfect or better to be good and good and on time than perfect and late.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And I think that you share that too. So
awesome, man. Well, we're out of time for today, but I've really enjoyed this interview. I'm definitely going to have you back on for a part 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody that's listening, if you have a question you want me and Danny to tackle on the next interview, you can email me, brian@brianelwood.net. Last thing before we go, Danny, you're a small business consultant in Columbia, Tennessee. Tell people where they can go just to learn a little bit more about you and what you do.
Sure. So the best place to go is Danny at dannycoleman.me or www.dannycoleman. Sorry, I said my email address to www.dannycoleman.me. Sorry, man. I'm going to have to type that out in the description. www.dannycoleman.me. And then my email address, get this, it's Danny at dannycoleman.me. So either of those ways, you can contact me there, or you can see my website and get to know me a little bit more there. That links to my LinkedIn, where you can see my resume and whatnot, which a lot of people like to do because of the way that what I'm consulting about has a lot to do with that. And then you can also book a call with me on clarity.fm. If you've never heard of clarity.fm, it's a great resource to find niche experts that can consult with you on a per minute basis. And I'm on there as well, and you can find me there.
Awesome. Sounds great, guys. Definitely go check out Danny's stuff. It's really amazing, and you don't want to miss it. So thanks for being on, Danny, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
All right. Peace.